Joining us on the How Did You podcast today is Aminata. She hosts a weekly show on the BBC Radio Leicester network and has been an outstanding creative since she last went to university. How are you doing today, Aminata?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
I want to know, did you always intend to look out for this call out? Is it something that you always wanted to do? Because you're a single mum yourself, always ever busy, got your own podcast, got your own weekly show. Was this something that was on your mind? Because you're always so busy, whether it be looking after people, presenting things like your own podcast and doing other things.
Honest answer is no. Never crossed my mind. I actually have a background in drama. I always wanted to act and be on a stage. And so ever since I was young, that's always the kind of thing that I wanted to pursue and do. And I did that briefly for a little while and kind of went in, backstage and was doing directing and writing and doing lots of research for performance. Radio was never something that crossed my mind. It wasn't even an avenue that I'd ever kind of explored or was interested in. It was just something that I listened to when I went in the car. That was literally it. But as you said in your intro, I responded to a call out. There was an opportunity to work at the BBC, and for me, I'm very much an opportunist. I'm always looking for the next best thing. Because my background is in performance arts and media, when the opportunity came, I was like, well, duh, of course I'm gonna go for it. And I did. And here I am, almost 3 years later.
That's quite an outstanding story because you were born in southeast London, decided to go to the Montfort University and decided to stay there since. How has it been since you completed your degree, then went on to a master's, and like you say, you became a broadcast journalist at BBC and then became a radio presenter hosting your weekly show?
It has been it's been a very turbulent journey. And this is why I like doing stuff like this, because people can look at stuff on the surface and it can all look very glamorous and sexy and exciting. And oh my gosh, you work at the BBC. But the journey to that destination has been, as I say, very turbulent, very up and down. Some years have been exceptional, others have been crazy, emotional, sad, challenging. But I think it's all those experiences that make you the creative that you are. And I know for me, my role on the radio is giving people a voice. It's listening to stories. It's having a deep level of compassion for people's journeys and giving a wider audience access to those stories. And my journey, as I say, has been an interesting one, to say the least. And so I tend to identify with a lot of the people that I speak to. And I guess that's what I want to do on air. I want to connect people and stories to a wider audience. And so as much as it's been a great and crazy journey, it's also been an amazing privilege to go on that journey.
I can completely understand that because I was flabbergasted when I found out that you attended the Black Lives Matter march for your 30th birthday. And I think that relates back to what you were saying. You want to relate, you want to be able to actually put yourself in that person's position because not only does it kind of create great content, it allows you and allows other people to experience what you're experiencing. But go.
Well, this is my life. I am a woman. I'm a Black woman. I am a mother. I am young, vibrant, and so I love to put myself in these spaces because that's just who I am. That's just where I belong. And you mentioned there me going on the Black Lives Matter march. For me, my 30th birthday happened in the middle of a pandemic, but there was something that was going on that was far greater that mattered to me. And I know that it doesn't just matter to me; it matters to my community. And it's important for me to be in the midst of all of that, going through that, not just standing on the sidelines and talking about it, but actually being in the midst of it, because it involves me. It's a part of me. Also me as a mother, I bring those experiences and those stories on air. I talk to people who are going through what it means to be a parent, a mother, navigating school holidays, being a working mom, or really investing time in your children, how to juggle all of that and still stay sane. All of these things are stuff that I experience. And so it's stuff that, I can talk about and relate to.
I am honestly flabbergasted that you honestly have the time to do it because 2012 you were nominated for Leicester's Young Person of the Year at the African and Caribbean Achievement Awards, and then a year later you were nominated for the Women's Startup Business of the Year award by Leicester Share for Business. This is, I guess, part of the ever evolving journey that you've taken yourself on. Like, you have to stay relevant within the media, and it seems as if you're doing an amazing job at it, especially with, like you say, the issues that we are surrounded by in everyday life, like the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd situation that went on. But you've done quite a lot of, I guess, simple word of putting it is campaigning and putting the word out there for women of colour, especially during your sister collective podcasts, which you host alongside your BBC radio presenters. How did that become a thing, and how proud are you to have that established and being able to represent that as a woman of colour?
So the BBC podcast, the Sister Collective, that actually came about because I got in trouble at work for having a voice. And, we all know working at the BBC, you have to remain impartial and you have to position yourself to have conversations in an impartial way to give everybody a voice. But as I say, I am a Black woman. I am Black. I have had my own personal experiences. I have siblings, friends, relatives who have gone through stuff. And around the time, this is even prior to when the George Floyd murder happened, from this date back generation to generation, Black people have had their have had their experiences and what we've gone through. And so my show was there to talk about these things, and I remember doing that on air. I'll tell you that actually what happened. My brother got stopped by the police, and he got stopped by the police and wasn't given any justification as to why he was stopped. And he video recorded it. So in the video, you could see how he was aggressively handled by, or shall I say forcefully handled by the police. And he hadn't, in the end, he hadn't done anything wrong. They didn't give him any explanation. And the way in which they handled him, he said, if I was in America, I would have been dead by now because I was reaching for my phone and you assumed I was reaching for something else. I asked you to explain and you didn't, and you were quite, physical towards me. And so I remember sharing this on air, on Twitter, and basically saying that this is the reality of what many young Black people go through. I said a few other things as well. And so that got escalated because, there are ways in which you can have conversations. And I was quite new to radio. I was quite new to all of this. As I say, had no experience in what I do prior to coming to the BBC. So I was learning about being a journalist whilst on the job. So when all of that noise happened, a lot of people got to know who I was. And then the podcast came about because it was like, right, this girl's got something to say. We need to give her a platform and a space to do just that. And, that's who I am. It is definitely about having that voice. It's about not shying away from these topics, but actually bringing these conversations to the forefront because it matters to people. This isn't just a personal experience to me, my brother. So many other people are having these experiences, and it's important that we share that.
Such an empowering story because, like you say, if it was in America, unfortunately, because of the way that people are treated over there. But your first day at the BBC, how did you find it?
Oh, my first day. It was very nerve-wracking, very, very nerve-wracking. I mean, it feels like such a long time ago. I remember just not really, because working on the radio, right? I mean, you would know this. It's not just about putting up your microphone and having a chat. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the back.
I wish it was. Honestly, I wish it was.
There's so much that you do, and I self-produce my show, so it's It's all about setting up your guests, having the right conversations with them, knowing the angle of the conversation that you want to have, even picking the right guest, the right person to have the conversation, who's going to bring the most value or the most insight to this conversation. Who else can I add to the mix to add flavor and color and diversity into the mix? There's so many different elements. And I just remember the first day. In fact, the first day, almost forgot. I had a sore throat. I had lost my voice. So I just sounded like a walrus. Like it was just horrible. I think it was all the excitement of going on air and, all the preparation. And I can be quite loud and eccentric sometimes. So I definitely worn myself out. First day on air, lost my voice, absolutely exhausted. But yeah, it was a beautiful time and the start of a pretty epic journey.
I'm about to ask about that. This pretty epic journey that you've been on. You've been on it since God knows when. 2019, we'll say, right?
I think so.
So my research checks out well, which is great. You
I
must have
think so.
had some experiences and interviewed some people where you've sat back and gone, why am I here? Like, do you ever get that kind of imposter syndrome, or is it the experiences that you've had you live with and adapt from?
All the time. Like I live, breathe, and exude imposter syndrome. Like I'm forever sometimes feeling, especially because I don't have a background in radio. As I say, I took hold of an opportunity that was presented to me. That's always who I've been, and I've always learned on the job. And so there's definitely been strong feelings of, am I good enough? Am I getting this right? Especially when I make mistakes that are public. And, in this industry, people scrutinize you. I've had comments on Twitter, even recently, someone's like, is this girl new? Like, and I've been in the game like coming up to 3 years now. But, there will always be people who like you, people who don't, people who criticize you. And I guess I know my value and I know what I bring to the table and I know why I'm here, even if I'm still figuring it out. So it's a constant battle of feeling like you're not good enough, but actually owning it because I believe I deserve to be here and I deserve to do what I'm doing. And it's a learning process. I don't think I'll ever arrive at perfection, but I'm definitely striving towards it, that's for sure.
Like you say, you hadn't had any background within radio. You did your degrees in your degrees both bachelors and masters in drama. But do you feel like those degrees have helped? Because obviously, not like you're putting up on a performance because you're being yourself, but you must find that the studying that you did at De Montfort University helps.
Yeah, I mean, it was about people. Drama is about people. It's about reading people. And I spent, in fact, majority of my master's degree looking at verbatim theatre. Now, verbatim theatre is theatre that is based on real life stories, real people. And I remember researching a writer called Tony Parker who used to go out to prisons and would speak to prisoners, interview them, and then use those scripts to form a play. I remember even around that time as well, the play The Riots came out, and that was taken from the riots, the London riots that were happening. And I remember just becoming so fascinated by people's raw, authentic stories. And so for me, it's never been about these fictional stories that we make up, which are great, majority of what we see is that, but stories that are based on real people where I can really connect to someone's journey. And yeah, a part of that is, it's the entertainment industry. Part of that is, you shape it to tell a story. But that background gave me the skills I needed in interviewing, because that's what I was doing. I was interviewing people. I was learning how to listen. And in this game is listening. Being a radio presenter to me is more about listening than about speaking. In order for me to ask the right questions, I really have to hear what it is that you're saying. I have to be able to relate and understand, make you feel comfortable. And that is what I did in my drama degree. So yeah, in a weird way, it's all kind of come together, but also it's given me confidence. You do a lot of crazy things at uni. Your course really stretches you, and allows you to kind of be exposed. You definitely feel very, very exposed in that environment and open to critique. So all of that stuff has definitely equipped me for what I'm doing now.
I can completely understand that because you never really learn until you're in the job, or you'll never really understand until you're in the job. Because, like you say, some of the experiences that you've had, like going on air your first day with a sore throat, you couldn't have imagined that to happen. You couldn't have planned for that to happen. So, if something's going to go wrong, it will. And
Literally.
I want to know, just because you're a radio presenter, that does not mean that you listen to every single track that is played out. What kind of what kind of music do you listen to?
You know what? I listen to all sorts, and because I self-produce my show, and I'm quite privileged in that the show that I present is a specialist show, so I select all the songs that I play, and because I'm, very embedded in my culture and my community, I know what the listeners want. I know what music they're listening to, so all of those songs are tracks that are relatable and because a lot of the tracks that we are playing, sometimes there's a lot of swearing. I legit have to listen to every single track from beginning. This is what I'm saying. Production is a lot. There's a lot that happens in the background. But, apart from my show, I do also present other shows, are sometimes our daytime shows, other shows that are around the country as well. So it's... in this game, right, as a journalist, you literally have to have your ear everywhere. And if I'm honest, that's what I find a bit of a challenge, not just with music, but with stories. And there can be a story coming out. You have to understand that story. You have to pay attention to the development of that story as that story progresses, the different angles of that story. So you really do. I mean, I'd say COVID was the hardest for me in terms of this conversation, because you weren't allowed to shut off. You couldn't shut off, and we were classed as key workers. Because we would bring in that key information to listeners consistently as it was developing, as the numbers were coming in, as the cases, as we were understanding what COVID was, as we were translating what COVID was to audiences. And so you weren't allowed to switch off, and that I have found very, very challenging, but equally a privilege, because you have the opportunity to give people information. And so it's also been a journey, my goodness, as it has been for many other people in a variety of ways.
Throughout the podcast, you've alluded to the point where people don't understand how much actually goes into a show, or not how much is actually done for production. Like you say, you have to listen to all the songs, get them queued up in Zeta, make sure your handoff's fine, make sure there's no transmission, whatever, any problems that could go wrong, you have to make sure that you're notified of them. But I want to know, do you think there's anything else that people underestimate within, like, say, the radio or the media?
Hmm, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question before. Anything that people kind of underestimate? Um, you know what? I'd say the power of a good question. I think there's a real skill in asking the right question. And that's not always very easy. I'll give you a little tip, right? This is something I do. So when I'm vetting, I don't want to say vetting people, but when I'm kind of trying to, I'm speaking to someone, having that pre-production chat, I'm talking to someone and kind of figuring out their stance. Sometimes they will ask me, um, please, can you give me all the questions that you're going to ask me on air? And I always say no, because when you give someone all the questions, they always over prepare. And then the conversation can become very quite static and linear, and it's not organic or authentic. And sometimes people forget, they think because they've overplanned, they think that they've said something, but actually on air, they haven't said that. So I don't give them questions. But the reason why I say I feel like questions is really underestimated is because when you ask the right question or a question that they weren't expecting you to ask them, that's where the magic happens. And as I said earlier, it's really important to listen, because when you listen, there might be something that someone says. And when you ask a question that hooks onto that something, you get an answer that probably another presenter will never get. Because we could all ask the standard questions, but I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to do something extra. So yeah, I think that's quite underestimated.
Okay, then I would like to know, if you had to name your autobiography, what's it going to be called?
Oh, hmm. I want to call it Becoming, but that's what Michelle Obama did. Um, Becoming who I was meant to be. That's what I would call it.
I really like that because it it it's exactly what you've done from drama to radio. Like you say, you left university, became a course administrator, as far as I can remember correctly. I was correct, a postgraduate course administrator, and then ended up becoming a focus coach and a workshop facilitator and things like that. But then you actually chose what you wanted to do. Like you say, you answered the BBC's call, and became who you wanted to be. And during that time, you must have used a lot of different technology. And I'm just going to throw the most informal question out there, whether it be software, hardware, I don't know, program based, anything. What is your favourite piece of technology?
Oh gosh. Favorite piece of technology? I mean, it's got to be my phone. It's just my phone. Everything happens on there. I'm an iPhone girl. I love that everything is connected. So I can put something in my phone, it's in my laptop, like the cloud has got everything all together. There was a time recently, a few years back actually, I jumped on the Android. I literally lasted 48 hours and got back in touch with the phone company. I was like, I can't do this. Please take it away. I can't use this phone. So yeah, I love that everything can be connected. And so yeah, it's definitely my phone. It's always in my hand.
I would like to know, with the use of your phone, is there a certain application that you like to use, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, or any kind of social networking, because there's loads of different ones, or is it a video sharing website like TikTok, or is it just Spotify so you can listen to music, or Apple Music, or any other apps?
Oh, I'm definitely saying my favorite app is Sonos. So I have Sonos speakers, and Sonos has on their actual app, you have literally every piece of audio. So it connects to Spotify, App, iTunes, podcasts, radio. I can literally go on my Sonos app and listen to anything. Um, and again, everything is in one place. So I love that. I listen a lot. I constantly have something on in the background. So yeah, hands down, that's got to be my favorite
Are you
app.
watching anything at the moment which has caught your eye, or you absolutely love and want to rave about?
I would say Top Boy. I've started watching the final series or the latest series of Top Boy. It was actually directed by a good friend of mine who I grew up with, Kobe Adon, who I'm very, very proud of. So yeah, I've just kickstarted it. I'm really, really, really slow at watching stuff. So I'm only halfway through the first episode. But hopefully I'll get through it. I'm quite late. A lot of people finished it like a good few weeks ago. But here I am still on episode one, but we'll get through it. I'm a more listener. I listen so much more than I watch.
I was about to ask that. Is there any kind of podcasts that you're listening to, or any kind of albums that you would see on your wrapped Spotify playlist without
Oh,
no doubt?
I love this question. So I'm just gonna like shout about everything that I love. I'd probably say my favorite podcast of all time is called Cut the Chat. And it's by four friends who were in a barbershop, four guys, and they just have conversations about absolutely anything. And I love just sitting in and listening to them chat. You literally feel like you're in the barbershop with them. So that's probably going to be one of my favorites. My second favorite after that is I listened to a crime podcast called Case Files. Um, and it's just so gripping. You listen to these stories where you're following the investigation and you're literally like, no, did he kill her? Or was it her? Or was it suicide? Like it's so gripping. But I mean, I must say, the guy who actually speaks, his voice isn't that pleasing, but the podcast is that gripping that it actually doesn't matter. I love it, absolutely love it. And I'd probably say album at the moment is a brand new album by Lucky Day. Huge fan of his music. He's just recently brought out an album called Candy Drip, I believe. So yeah, favorite album right now.
I've absolutely enjoyed this podcast, but if we were to sum it all up, I want to know, is there a piece of advice that you live by in life that you've either received or just grown up with that you'd like to share with others?
Yes, take advantage of opportunities. Don't see yourself as not good enough to go for something. Just go for it. What in the world do you have to lose? And this is what I always say when, when I speak to people, and I'm always pushing out opportunities, because sometimes it's just because someone hasn't seen it. People are just constantly, there's always stuff happening. So I think it's important to share that information. But when you see something, I beg, please just apply. Like, just apply. Or pick up the phone, ask a question. And can I also say, right, it's actually very easy to get in contact with people. I have DM'd people on Instagram and had responses. Sometimes I've guessed email addresses and I've heard back. A little bit of research will take you a long way. And especially because a lot more people are working from home now, it's actually easier to get, you can message someone on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? Get in touch, put yourself out there, like be brave enough, silly enough, and ambitious enough to know that it's possible. So that's what I would say. Put yourself out there.